I've had several requests for my technique for doing the tubular or Italian cast on. There are different ways, like a long tail method. I've seen a few different ways to do it, but this is the way that I do it. I find it easier, especially if I have to count several stitches. Let me tell you what you will need first. You will need some kind of slippery yarn or ribbon. I believe this is mercerized. You will need a crochet hook. Any size will do. Your knitting needles, circulars, yarn, the work yarn that you plan on working with, and an opening stitch marker, some kind of stitch marker that you'll open. This tutorial assumes that you crochet a little bit, or at the very least know how to do a slip knot. What I'm going to do is just create a little slip knot and crochet a few chains. There's no exact amount. You can crochet 4 or 5, whatever works for you. I'm going to do that. And this method is really easy. It eliminated the need for me to have a long tail, but let me show you. So you make your chains, however many you plan on using, and you're going to bring the ribbon to the back of your knitting needle. They should be side by side. You wrap the yarn or ribbon around both the knitting needle crochet hook, and you crochet a stitch onto your knitting needle. This method is kind of nice because you only need to cast on half of the total amount you need. So let's say you need 100 stitches on your knitting needle. You only need to cast on 50. Just for the sake of this example, I'm going to cast on 10. So that's 1. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you get to your last stitch, always double count too. Double check 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. When you get to your last stitch, you're going to chain some more just in the off the end, and there again, no exact number. And this time you're going to put your stitch marker in. This will all make sense later. Just put your stitch marker in, or your little safety pin, something that you can open up later. And you should have something that looks like this. So you shall have a little chain on both ends. These ends do not count for anything, okay? So you're not knitting into them, you're not doing anything with them, but this will make sense when you're done. At this point, we're really done with the crochet hook. You can put that aside, and you're going to get your working yarn. This yarn has been used so many times for tutorials and examples, so please excuse the condition, but what you're going to do, let me explain before we start. You're going to double your stitches. That's your first setup row. You double your stitches by doing knit, yarn over all the way through. Knit, yarn over all the way to the end. So you want to hold your yarn in the back. I tension in my left hand. However you tension is fine, but you're going to start your first stitch as a knit. Slide it off the needle, yarn over, knit, yarn over, and you are just going to repeat these steps all the way to the end, and it doubles your stitches. So if you have 200 stitches you need to cast on, this saves you a lot of time because you only have to crochet on half of the amount. You get to your last stitch. This is where, instead of doing a yarn over, I want to secure my stitch. I'll do a slip knot stitch. So I take my thumb, bring it underneath the yarn, bring my needle towards me, under that, and tug down a little. Doesn't have to be super tight, and be mindful that this side is loose. turn your work. And now we're going to do the first setup row of our tubular cast on. Other people may do it differently. This is strictly my method. In this case, we're going to knit the first stitch, bring the yarn to the front, and slip the purl with the yarn in front. And we're going to do that all the way across. So knit the knits, slip the yarn in the front, and slip the purls. So let's do that now. Knit. That first one is always tricky. Bring your yarn in front and slip that as if to purl. And you just continue to do that. And be mindful, it's fiddly, but trust the process. You do that all the way across. If you were working in the round, you would have a stitch marker between your first and last stitch, and you would do the same setup row around. Just working my way across. Oops, almost dropped my knit. Slip the purl, getting to the end, and it's getting even more fiddly. Sorry guys, that was supposed to be a knit, and I need to slip this one. And be careful, because remember, this is not really anchored to anything yet. You want to carefully turn your work, and you're going to repeat those steps. So you're going to knit the knit and slip the purl. And again, be mindful, you don't want to pull that yarn out. So when I slip this first stitch off, I'm going to tug up that first knit stitch and just make your way back across. Knit the knits, slip the purls with the yarn in front, all the way across. Almost there. Almost there. And you should almost always end on a purl stitch. Turn your work again. This would be a good time to snug up the starting stitch. This will be our last setup round, and it will be the same exact thing. Knit the knits and slip the purls with the yarn in front. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. Making my way to the end. So let's take a closer look at that. That's what it should look like. Very neat, very tidy. And at this point, you could start your 1x1 ribbing. So I'm just going to do a few rows of 1x1 ribbing where you knit the knit, purl the purls. I don't usually purl this way, so bear with me. It's a little slower for me. And we'll just speed up to get across. We'll do a few rows of this so I can show you what it looks like. It's a very smooth transition from the setup rows into your ribbing. Your ribbing is going to look so crisp, in my opinion. It's probably one of my favorite cast-ons because it's actually quite stretchy and it just has a really polished look. Making our way across. We'll do one more row just so you have enough to visualize what's going on here. Almost at the end. Just a second, right there. We'll turn our work again, and you can see we're just plodding along, and it really does go from tubular cast on right into 1x1 ribbing without any kind of hitch. Just very smooth transition. This will be our last row, and then I'll show you where the magic happens. Just a very cool way to see how the tubular cast on takes effect, in my opinion. Okay, so we have our setup rows, a couple of rows of ribbing. Now this is where, you know, where we have our stitch marker. You're going to want to take that off now, and this happens so quickly, so the only way to make it dramatic, which we don't necessarily have to do, we just take that out. But this is where our magic happens. Zoom in just a little bit. So the end that had the stitch marker is where we're going to work. Now I want you to watch. You just pull and it all comes right out. That's your tubular cast on. And as you can see, it just kind of cascades right over and looks super crisp and clean. That's all there is to a tubular cast on. Hope this was helpful. Thank you guys.